Quneitra Governorate is one of the 14 governorates of Syria. It is situated in southern Syria, notable for the location of the Golan Heights. The governorate borders the countries of Lebanon, Jordan and Israel, and the Syrian governorates of Darar and Rif Dimaz HQ. Its area varies, according to different sources, from 685 square kilometers to 1,861 square kilometers. The governorate had a population of 87,000 at the 2010 estimate. The nominal capital is the now abandoned city of Quneitra, destroyed by Israel before their withdrawal in June 1974 in the aftermath of the Yom Kippur War. Since 1986, the de facto capital is Bait city. During the Syrian civil war, most of the portions of the governorate that are not held by Israel were taken by various opposition and jihadist forces. In the summer of 2018, the rebel-held areas in the governorate were retaken by the Syrian government. The area surrounding Quneitra has been inhabited for millennia. Paleolithic hunter-gatherers are thought to have lived there, as evidenced by the discovery of Lavalua and Mousterian flint tools in the vicinity. A settlement was established at least as early as the late Hellenistic period, and continued through the Roman and Byzantine times. It was known by the name, Sarasai. The settlement served as a stop on the road from Damascus to western Palestine. Saint Paul is said to have passed through the settlement on his way from Jerusalem to Damascus. The site of the conversion of Paul was traditionally identified with the small village of Kokab, northeast of Quneitra, on the road to Damascus. The governorate was established in 1964 by splitting it from the Rif Dimaz HQ governorate. Most of the governorate was captured by Israel in the 1967 Six-Day War. The deserted city remained in Israeli hands for the next 6 years. However, Israel and Syria remained in a state of war throughout this period. The town gained a fresh symbolic value. It was seen by the Syrians as the badge of Syria's defeat, an emblem of hatred between Syria and Israel, and a cross had to bear. During the first few days of the Yom Kippur War in 1973, Quneitra was briefly recaptured by the Syrian army before it was repulsed in an Israeli counter-offensive. In the middle of October 1973, the Israeli counter-offensive started. The Syrians had massed nearly 1,000 tanks along a 100 kilometers front. With a massive concentration of tanks, the Israelis lashed into the Syrian forces. The Syrians at first fell back, but then managed to counterattack and drive back into occupied territory. Quneitra changed hands several times. Finally, Israeli armored units, closely supported by Phantoms and Skyhawk fighter jets performing close air support with napalm strikes against the forward Syrian units, halted the Syrian drive and turned the Syrian army back. A group of settlers from Merom Golan, a settlement established in 1967, took over an abandoned bunker in Quneitra and declared it to be a new settlement called Keshe. The settlers also set about razing the existing town to the ground. The leader of Merom Golan, Yehuda Hayel, and another Merom Golan member, Shimshon Walner, initiated the destruction of Quneitra, which was carried out by the Land Development Administration of the Jewish National Fund. Hayel later described what happened. Shimshon and I walked around Quneitra all day and tried to decide what to do. And then these two strange ideas came up. One was to establish a settlement in Quneitra and the second was to destroy Quneitra. Walner and Hayel asked the Jewish National Fund to carry out the work, ostensibly to prepare an area for agricultural cultivation, but were refused as they did not have permission from the Israeli army. They then approached the assistant to the head of Northern Command and asked him to mark on a map which buildings the army needed, according to Hayel. So he took a felt pen and marked the hospital and a few other places. He wrote, "Not for destruction," and on other places he wrote, "For destruction," and he signed. He thought he was signing about what not to destroy, but he was actually writing to destroy. The tractors of the Jewish National Fund did the destroying. They weren't our tractors. I can tell you that even the tractor drivers were Arabs. The buildings were systematically stripped, with anything movable being removed and sold to Israeli contractors, before they were pulled apart with tractors and bulldozers. The disengagement went into force on the 6th of June. On the 26th of June, the Syrian President Hafez al-Assad traveled to Quneitra, where he pledged to return the rest of the occupied territories to Syrian control. Western reporters accompanied Syrian refugees returning to the city in early July 1974 and described what they saw on the ground. Time magazine's correspondent reported that most of its buildings are knocked flat, as though by dynamite, or pockmarked by shell fire. Le Monde's Syria correspondent, in a report for The Times, gave a detailed eyewitness description